On a side note, if you want to become rich, you don't have to be in Goa. You can check out some of my courses on Wisdom Hatch. I talk about stock markets, I talk about management consulting. So far, our students have loved us. Go check it out if you are more financially aware and if you are improving upon your skill set, you will stand to make great money irrespective of which state you are in. So yeah, over to the video.
So on this video, we are going to understand how did Goa go from this to this. Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. So recently I did a poll on my YouTube channel asking people that why do they think Goa is extremely rich. So the answer did not surprise me. Almost 85% of the respondents said that it is because of tourism. And I too felt exactly the same. But unfortunately, all of us were wrong there because tourism's contribution to Goa stands at roughly 16%. And if you take a look at the mining contribution to Goa's GDP, it stands at roughly 17%. So I delved deeper into the answer. I figured out that, hey, Goa has a very big coastline. So maybe fisheries is contributing a lot to Goa's GDP. Guess what? Again, I was wrong because fisheries contribution to Goa's GDP stands at roughly 3%. So I scrolled through the comments thinking that maybe local Goan people would give me some help, and I found one such very interesting comment. So the person said that almost 20% of Goans actually go outside India, and when they are working they send a lot of remittances back to Goa, and as a result Goa is very rich. So I don't know the veracity of this fact, but remittances contribution to Goa's GDP is only 6%. So again, it's not because of remittances that Goa is becoming rich. Then finally, I found the answer that it is because of Ajing's contribution that Goa has become rich. No, I'm just kidding. And on this video, I'm going to talk about the fascinating history of Goa and what made it super rich and what is it that other states in India can learn from Goa in terms of expanding their wealth. And I'm going to do this analysis by telling you 3 simple mini stories. That's it. That's what the simple agenda for today's video is. I'm going to tell you just 3 simple stories, and that will give you a lot of clarity as to why Goa became rich. So here is story 1, which is the story of spices, and for this you need to understand Goa's history a little bit. Goa back in 3rd century BC was ruled by the Mauryan Empire, which was one of the richest empires in the world. Then over 700 years it got ruled by several Hindu empires, then it got ruled by several Muslim empires, and then finally Portuguese established their presence in Goa and ruled Goa for roughly 400 years, and with that they brought in ships and spice trade. Now spices was very important for Europeans back in the 15th and 16th century. Not only it gave flavor to the food, it was used as preservative, it was used in medicinal purposes, it was used literally as room freshener. So to cut the long story short, there was a lot of demand for spices in Europe and people were willing to pay a lot of money for it. In fact, some of the important spices, for example pepper, it could go up to 3.5 times its value, and as a result European traders saw a lot of incentive in terms of procuring spices in Southeast Asia and taking them back to Europe. In order to do this, they were exploring 2 different routes. One was that of Constantinople. This was a landlocked area, and here Europeans got direct access to some of the spice trade routes. And the second channel, and a much more conducive channel, was to use the sea route via the Red Sea, which was controlled by Arabs. Now by the mid of the 15th century, the Constantinople Empire fell, and as a result there was a lot of turmoil in this landlocked area and a lot of spice trade was impacted. Seeing this as an opportunity, the Arabs increased a lot of taxes on Europeans in order for them to continue to use their sea routes to trade in spices. This irked a lot of Europeans and also gave them an incentive to go and discover better sea routes in order to continue this spice trade, and that is where Goa comes into the mix. A lot of warships were sent from Europe via Cape of Good Hope, which is in South Africa, all the way to Goa, South India and Southeast Asia. So Portuguese Goa was established in 1510 in India, and within 20 years it became the capital of the Portuguese. Now back in the day, the Portugal empires was rich and flourishing, and as a result the growth of Goa also happened, and that initial seed capital came to Goa. As per several sources, this was also called as Goa's golden age. Now during this phase, there was a lot of development that happened in the world, especially around ship design and how ships used to travel all across the globe. People understood trade, accounting processes, shipping, port building, and a bunch of other different things that increased the volume of trade that was undergoing in the world. One could argue that the way the Dutch taught the British empires how to build ships, there was a lot of knowledge transfer that happened from Spain to India in terms of building ships as well. Now, within another 200 years, the Portuguese Empire started to decline. There was a series of high inflation problem in Portugal, and even within India, it met with a lot of resistance, which weakened the Portuguese Empire. So one could argue that in the first 150 odd years of Portuguese rule, Goa prospered a lot with the rise of the Portuguese Empire. But after that, it somewhat stagnated, and the nature of Goanese economy changed quite a bit. Then fast forward to post-independence in India. In 1961, Goa was liberated under Operation Vijay, and by that time, the nature of Goa's economy changed quite a bit. But again, it continued to depend somewhat on natural resources. Instead of spices, they started depending on red ochres, and these are red-looking hills that you might often find if you're traveling in Goa. You will find them quite extensively all in and around Goa. So this brings us to the second mini story, which is the story of red ochres and its contribution to Goa's economy. So this is what a red hill or red ochre look like. It is full of minerals, especially iron ore, and at one point in time, almost 50% of the iron ore that was exported out of India, it came from Goa itself. So the modern day wealth that was planted in Goa was not through spices but through iron ore. Now this can be illustrated both through a contemporary and historic look as to how iron ore has contributed to Goa's GDP, and from time and time you can see that the contribution of iron ore to Goa's GDP has been quite enormous. Now, not only iron ore's contribution to Goa's GDP was quite high, it also formed the basis of entrepreneurship in Goa. So, I will discuss very quickly about three of the modern architects of Goa's economy. So, first and foremost was Mr. Vasantrao Dempo, and he has been a big philanthropist in Goa, and he has also received several prestigious awards, including Padma Shri. He started his journey in the mining business and over time expanded to different businesses. Then came Mr. Vasantrao Chogle, and he was into import-export business and was involved a lot, quite heavily, in terms of export of iron ore outside India. Then came Mr. R.C. Chogle, who started a shipping business and has over time expanded into different business empires. Now, these three individuals were some of the highest tax-paying entrepreneurs from Goa at the time Goa got liberated in 1961. So a natural question comes that why is it that there was so much demand of iron ore, and what created so many big-time entrepreneurs in Goa who were involved in the mining business? The answer has to do with the world history. So this was a time when the world started recovering after World War II. There was massive demand in terms of increasing the industry output. Countries were devastated. Many of them started rebuilding their economies by 1950s. There was a massive expansion of economy that was undertaking in the US from 1920 to 1950. So the overall iron ore export was picking up, and by 1955, Goa ended up creating 3 crore-patis. Back in the day, being crore-pati was very big deal. So by 1955, there were 3 crore-patis in Goa and several lakh-patis, all credit to mining business. With more money comes more luxuries, and Goa is blessed in terms of having natural resources, in terms of having that initial seed capital for growth, in terms of having a culture that attracts a lot of tourists, and finally, a more literate society and workforce. So this brings us to the third and final mini story about Goa becoming rich, which has to do with beach, sands and tourists. Now here is a chart that shows the growth of tourism in Goa, and Goa has been growing in terms of tourists at a rate of 11% in the last decade up until the COVID hit. Now there are multiple reasons why Goa has always had a booming tourist economy, and I will outline a few key reasons here. First and foremost, Goa has inherent advantages in terms of beautiful landscape, accessibility to big cities like Mumbai, and a lot of connectivity. Second key reason has to do with relative strength of tourism, which means that people actually find it safe, especially foreign tourists. They find themselves to be slightly more safer when they are visiting Goa vis-a-vis when they are visiting other parts of India. It hurts me to say this, but unfortunately other states have not taken a leaf out of Goa's playbook in order to develop their own tourism. One of the primary reasons why foreign tourists love to visit Goa is the sense of security that they get here. So this is one area where I feel that a lot of other states can develop their tourism and also boost their economy. Now, on top of that, Goa has a modern appeal, and it is benefiting from an uptrend, because if you think about it, then after 1991, the Indian economy started opening up. A lot of foreign tourists want to visit India, and Goa by default become their go-to destination, especially when it comes to Russian and European tourists, because they are much more familiar with the culture here, history here, and as a result, they definitely want to see this place. On top of this, we need to give credit to the governments in terms of the work that they have done on tourism. Right now, for example, the state expenditure in terms terms of developing tourism in Goa as a percentage of state GDP has been one of the highest in Goa. So definitely there has been a lot of focus from the government in terms of improving Goa as a leading tourist destination. Now 2020 was a very troubling time for the Goa's economy when the influx of foreign tourists stopped completely, and in fact even domestic tourists did not travel due to COVID restrictions. And since 40% of Goa's population depends on tourism, unfortunately, the Goa's economy slowed down. In order to remedy this situation, we need to understand how Goa is building a more resilient economy as of now. First and foremost being the pharma industry. Almost 10% of India's contribution to the pharma space comes from Goa. So this is a very good diversification strategy that Goa has adopted. Second key thing, they are reviving some of their old industries. For example, up until a few years back, the mining in Goa was banned due to environmental and political concerns, and now that part of the economy is getting opened up. Recently, the government made the announcement that they are going to infuse roughly 650 crore rupee in order to build the mining industry further. This is a highly political issue, so I will refrain from speaking about it because people are speaking for and against this topic, and I do not know enough about this topic as of now. If you want, I will research more and I will make a separate video on that. But to cut the long story short, even the iron ore industry is picking back up, and there has been a lot of announcements made in terms of reducing the export prices, etc., etc. The modern day startup industry in Goa is also picking up. Given its close proximity to Karnataka, especially Bangalore, there can be a lot of influx of tech companies in Goa, and it can actually become a major hub, especially given the fact that people are preferring to work from home, and Goa can become a poster child for such an economy. So finally, we have gambling and other sin industry, so to say. So gambling is bringing in roughly 414 crores of revenue every year for Goa, which seems like huge. And of course, they are making a lot of money through sale of alcohol. So in summary, this is where we stand, that given Goa's rich cultural heritage, abundance of resources, some right moves by the government, the type of people that Goa fosters and attract, Goa has definitely taken a competitive advantage when it comes to generating wealth. Given the fact that they are intelligently diversifying the economy, I am hopeful that Goa will become even more prosperous with time. If you like this case study, do press the like button and share it with your friends, and do let me know in the comment box which state would you want me to cover next.